Is that too loud?
No.
This is number channel 1, HH1. Sorry about that. Is this better? Is this better? Okay.
Good.
So the astute observer will notice I'm not a woman, but I am an entrepreneur. And I wanted to start this off by talking about how this got started, because I think that knowing how it got started will help give a little depth to this event. And it got started like many of the best entrepreneurial things with finding out about unmet demand and finding supply to meet that demand, and then finding someone else who could benefit from the supply meeting the demand, pay for everything, which is, I think, a great way to get things started. So I'm a professor here at NYU. I teach entrepreneurial marketing and sales. And more relevant to here, I'm also the faculty advisor for the undergraduate floor for special interest housing for entrepreneurship. And at the beginning of the year, I asked the students what they were interested in for programming for types of events. And they came up with lots of great ideas. And one of them was that they said that we want, and I think I see the student right here who said that, what was interested in more role models that were women entrepreneurs. And I'm not sure, but I think that within my lifetime, a request for something like that might have ended right there. But being an entrepreneur, I have a bunch of friends who are women entrepreneurs, and I asked them, could you come and speak to this floor? And several of them came back and said, yes, and we know lots of other people who could also participate. And so the unmet demand found all the supply. And then we went to NYU and we found this space, which we got here. That was paid for by someone who gets an interest from this community happening. And actually, I think we're limited. We have to have like a 50-50 ratio of NYU students to NYU people to non-NYU people. So I think this event might have been even bigger otherwise. So it's been really exciting to see it take on a life of its own. So I wanted to give that as a background for how this got started. Next, I want to introduce Caroline Moss, who is a reporter for Business Insider. And she's been covering this meeting for a while, so I think you know a lot more about this than everyone.
Wouldn't say that, but
We say
I know. Yeah.
And so I'm going to introduce Caroline and get everything started. And I also want to thank everyone who got things started, who organized things. If I start saying names, I'll miss some names. But some of them are sitting over here, and we're around the room. So thank you to everyone for making this happen. Okay, let me not take your time anymore. And here's Caroline.
Hi, everybody. I am very honored to be here. My name is Caroline Moss. I'm a reporter at Business Insider, which is a digital business weblog. Our main competition is the Wall Street Journal, but we really write about everything. One of the best comments I usually get on my stories is, what does this have to do with business? It's great. A lot of what I cover is technology, and because I'm a woman and have an interest in women who are doing some badass things, I tend to want to cover women, and I leave men to be covered by the men on my team, or whoever wants to. I don't really care. So I tend to gravitate towards women who are doing really awesome things. When Grace asked me to come moderate this panel, I jumped at the opportunity. I think it's a really amazing way to learn about other women's experiences, B, get a role model, C, learn something, D, ask questions. So I'm going to introduce these wonderful women before me. Do I need this, or am I loud enough?
I think you're allowed.
I'll just kind of hold it here. Okay. Coco and Breezy, Coriana and Brianna. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Yeah. Okay. They are twins. They are known as Coco and Breezy. They founded their sunglass brand when they were in high school.
Right after high school.
Right after high school.
17. We graduated high school early.
Yeah. So cool. So they grew up in Minnesota. They started designing sunglasses that you couldn't find anywhere else, and people would bombard you on the street asking you where you guys got them,
Yeah.
And what did you tell them?
We're like, we didn't know. We're like, we made it for ourselves. We weren't planning on selling them, so we're like, okay, let's start a website.
Did you have friends who were like, hey, I'll give you $30, come back tomorrow with some
It wasn't necessarily our friends in Minnesota, because no one understood it. So when we came to New York, it was random people on the street that were like, oh my gosh, here's $100, I support art. And they would just take the glasses off her face. No, seriously, that's how we got our first rent in New York. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, from what I've read about you guys and from what I know, you guys came to New York City without an apartment. You didn't have a lease signed, and in 1 week, your sunglasses were on GMA and Dancing with the Stars. Ashanti wore them at the Hip Hop Honors Awards, and a couple years later, here we are. You've been featured in Teen Vogue and Women's Wear Daily, Cosmopolitan, Nylon, and Rihanna and Beyonce have both worn your sunglasses.
Yep, and there's more.
Yeah, that's just a small smattering, which is amazing, because that was, what, started 5 years ago?
About 4.5.
How old are you guys right now?
23.
All right, pretty awesome. Jules Miller is here from Hire and Esquire. Hire and Esquire is a software service that basically allows law practices and departments to reach out and employ freelance and like lawyers, correct, Jules?
Correct.
All right, and she is the COO, and she runs the New York office. Before this, she was a consultant at Ernst & Young, and she also helped big corporations like Salesforce.com and Tiffany & Co. By leading their environmental sustainability programs. And she thinks, and I quote, "making attorneys' lives less miserable is a much more satisfying endeavor." So Jules, how did you get started? How did you break out of corporate America?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was always entrepreneurial, but I became an entrepreneur. So I was doing things within firms like starting their environmental sustainability initiatives to the point where I set up my own consulting firm doing that. And I was trying to hire myself out as, you know, and I was hiring myself out on a temporary basis. And my lovely friend of, since I was 14 was a lawyer, and we decided that that was a much bigger business opportunity than sustainability. And so we started this company that way.
Was there any moment that like broke the straw that broke the camel's back, where you were like, forget this, I'm going off on my own?
Yeah, I think it was when I got fired.
Oh.
Which was specifically because, like, I was working really hard, starting new programs, and it was like a big company with lots of internal politics, and it was not, you know, a meritocracy, and I got on someone's, like, nerve because I was doing more stuff and getting more credit than them, and so, well, that's my interpretation of it at least, and I was like, you know, this isn't working for me, it's moving too slow, and that's how the company was born.
So there's a silver lining.
Yeah, you're not a real entrepreneur unless you've gotten fired a couple times.
I'll quote you on that. And we have Alex Meese here from Kinvolved. And what Kinvolved does is, and tell me if I'm missing any element, it basically is an app that keeps track of students' attendance, so that when they go into the school, they're automatically like checked in via SMS, and then parents get a notification that they have. You tell me.
That was pretty good.
Okay.
But a teacher has to do some work still. They have to use their app to record the student attendance, and I was just with some 6th graders the other day and started screaming and yelling at me because I told them that their parents were going to get a text message or email the next time they were late or absent from school. So you guys are a little more conducive.
So basically, when they're not there, they don't get checked in, and then a text gets sent to their parents being like, your kid's not here. Which is like great for parents and probably like sucks if you're a kid and you're trying to cut school. But that's pretty amazing. And you just graduated, or you're graduating?
I graduated from Wagner right here in May of last year.
And now you're located in Brooklyn.
Yeah, now I'm at the Blue Ridge Foundation in Brooklyn.
And you were telling me earlier you have 5 schools now and 2 in Minnesota who are operating with Kinvolved. What are some of the best stories that you've heard come out of schools using your program?
Some of the best or the funniest, or I don't even know where to start, but I got an email the other day from a principal saying she got a phone call from a dad who's down in the Dominican Republic screaming that he heard his kid was 5 minutes late to school. So that was pretty sweet that we are sending text across the world basically. So that was awesome. That was pretty fun.
And we also have Angela Lee, who is the founder of 37 Angels. which deals mostly with angel investors, and the statistic is that 13% of angel investors are women. Angela wants to push that number to be 50%. And she is sort of a woman of the world. This is her 4th company that she started, and she teaches leadership and strategy courses at Columbia, and she's their executive director of teaching excellence, and she has 15 years experience in marketing strategy and innovation. She's been featured on Bloomberg, MSNBC, Forbes, CNBC. She probably knows more than anyone in this room. Angela, can you talk about why it's so important that women kind of get their hands dirty, get into the angel investor scene, and sort of take over?
Wow, that's a big question. I think it's important. So I always like to say that I'm not necessarily pro-women, I'm pro-diversity, right? And so I get asked all the question like, how can I get more female investors as an entrepreneur? And I always say, like, don't have a female on the board just for the sake of having a female. Just recognize that we all add diversity, have different industry backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, and I just think that diversity of thought adds to the quality of the output. There's lots of data to show that when a woman is on a board of a corporate, Fortune 500 company, that those companies do better. And it's not necessarily because women necessarily make better leaders, it's that I think a diverse team leads to a better output. Another statistic that I'll throw out is that companies are much more likely to be successful if they pivot. You guys have all heard this, right? Products pivot 2, 3, 5, 7 times before they're successful. And multi-person co-founding teams are just much more likely to pivot. Again, because you just got a diversity of thought.
Sorry, what does it mean for it to pivot?
Pivot means that, so Wikipedia, which I'm sure you guys all use, started out as a database for academics, like myself and Josh, to upload white papers. And the ask was, and it was just this database purely for academic white papers that were very, very boring, that I'm sure some of you guys have read in class. And then over time, that turned into what Wikipedia is today. So it's just the idea of changing something about the startup into hopefully what's eventually successful. Pinterest started out as Tote. So it used to be a mobile e-commerce play where you would go onto Macy's and be like, I like this sweater. Go to Bloomingdale's, I like this purse. And they thought it was going to be a joint e-commerce app that everybody could check out from. And what they found is that nobody was buying anything. But what were they doing? They were going, hey, look at this outfit I put together from Bloomingdale's, Macy's, and Nordstrom. And that became Pinterest. So those are pivots. That was a very long answer.
No, that's great. I was just thinking about Pinterest now. So I think what I'll do is I'll ask a question. If anyone has an answer right away, you can jump in, and I'll probably just go down the row. And if anyone has a question and wants to just pop in, that's fine too. I think I'll start with, has being a woman made your experience as an entrepreneur different? And I'll reference a story that we did on Business Insider very recently about a female CEO, Una Kim, of Locket. I'm not sure if any of you read this story, but it was really crazy. She owns this company called Locket. It brands the lock screen on Android phones. She was recruiting, and she sent out emails, and a man who she had tried to recruit emailed her back and was like, and I will quote it because I saved it, it was insane. She's looking for people to join her team. She gets this email back from this guy, and it says, I'm pretty happy with my current job, but if you're single, I'd like to date you. Perhaps there are some unconventional ways to lure me away from my company besides stock options, if you know what I mean, with a smiley face emoticon. Now, I think that this is something that women probably face regularly, not being taken seriously, men thinking that their company is cute, or that this is kind of like a fun joke. And I think that putting these stories out in the public eye makes it a topic that we're not able to ignore anymore. So on that note, I'd love to hear from all of you, some of the challenges and some of the fears that come along with starting your own business and being a woman. And I know that's kind of heavy. So if anyone has
I have a good story, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
So not only am I a female, obviously, my co-founder is also a woman. So, the two main people of the company are women. This wasn't really an issue. We didn't think it would be an issue until we started raising money. So we just closed a seed round of venture capital investment over the course of, actually almost 12 months, we spoke to probably 100 investors. There was a point where we got a lot of feedback, good and bad. Some of it was obvious that it was because we were women in the room. So we had our CTO who was basically exiting the company at that point. We were raising money to hire a new CTO. We brought him to meetings as a booth dude because we would get such different feedback as a woman, and two women, that when there was a male in the room. So just adding that male dynamic really changed the course of the conversation. Everything from, oh, that's a nice marketplace for working moms, which is what we got when the two of us were just pitching, to, oh, this is going to revolutionize the legal industry. So subtle things like that to very unsubtle things like, you don't need my money, you need a richer boyfriend, to when are you, accounting for, having a baby in your financial projections. These things were ridiculous, and to this day I still can't believe they happened, but they did. And so you do what you can, and we would bring in our male booth dude who we tell him what to wear, we tell him how to the specific things he was supposed to do. It was the same presentation, but it completely changed the dynamic.
I'll answer it as a female investor, although I've been a female entrepreneur and have those stories as well. I think just recognize the biases that people might have about you walking in the door. So questions that we get asked a lot as female investors are, what does your husband do, because you must be investing his money? Or is your network full of rich housewives? And so some of the things that we do to kind of overcome that we are smart money in the room is half of our network is former entrepreneurs. And we do that very mindfully so that we can say, look, we're adding value above and beyond the dollars that we're writing. Can you guys hear me, by the way? Just kind of overcoming that. So know what the biases are for you and just maybe overcome them right off the bat. Okay, I'm done for now, but I'll use the next one.
Well, I would say for us, I wouldn't say we've been through too many challenges, but I do have a story where there's a guy that, because we do trade shows. I don't know if you guys are familiar with fashion, we do trade shows. And there's a guy who has an awesome brand, and he's like, yeah, do you want to go to lunch? He did sales for a bunch of brands. So I'm like, all right, great, we can go to lunch. So we went to lunch. First start off with coffee. So we went to coffee, it was cool. He's like, all right, we should do a collaboration. I'm like, awesome, his brand is more mass market, we're a different direction. So I was just telling him, maybe we can just design some things. And then we went to all right, let's go to dinner so we can talk more about it. Then dinner ended up with him trying to kiss me. And I was like, okay, we're here for a sales meeting, you're asking me to kiss you? This is not a date. So I was very standoffish. So then, maybe a year later, he contacted me again because now he had his company got so many orders that he couldn't handle them. So he got a new investor, whatever. So he got this huge distribution, and they needed eyewear in their company. But it wasn't for us to not for a collaboration. He just needed us to help with production. I'm like, all right, cool. So he has a new office in the city, but I guess it's his investors. He was waiting for us to go meet with them just to figure out costs for production. But then he was like, all right, why don't you just come to my apartment, and then we'll go to my office. But I'm like, I have to work. I'll meet you at your office, when you find out what time we should be there. And then he never called me back. And so I was very aggravated about it because it would have been a great opportunity, but then I'm also not naive either. So I wasn't gonna go. I'm not that thirsty to go to someone's apartment and wait to go to their office. But that was the only thing that has happened to me as far as being a woman in business.
And also too, I think, as you can see, Coco and I are really edgy. We wear this to business meetings because this is us. And I think that there's a lot of people that will judge us being young, edgy girls with tattoos. And there's a lot of people in the business industry that will judge you. They're like, oh, they must be, they always see us oh, you guys probably party, where's the next party at? We don't know where the next party, we're always in the office, in our design studio. I'll tell you when the next design session is, but that's been a huge challenge for us. We've been in huge meetings, and we'll walk in, and the secretary would say, oh, who are you guys meeting with? And we'll say the name of the big boss over the whole huge company, and she's like, oh, I don't think they're with Macy's.
Yeah,
and we went to a huge a meeting of a potential investor, but they had a Macy's headquarters party, and the secretary totally judged us based on our style, and then she realized we were meeting the boss. But I think that we get more challenges not being women, but more so being edgy girls with tattoos in business. But we don't let it stop us, so.
Just to round that out, I'll keep it brief.
I feel like I get this question all the time, like, you're a woman, how's it feel to be a woman? I'm like, well, you're a man, how's it feel to be a man? Come on, like, it's the 21st century. But in tech, I mean, the reality is that 3 to 5% of tech companies are founded by women. That is a very, very small number, and I'm one of them, and I feel oftentimes very alone in the room as a female tech entrepreneur. But then when you get the question, I was just interviewed in the latest edition of Entrepreneur magazine. If you flip to page like 72, you'll see one sentence from me. And this was an hour conversation I had with this reporter about how do you feel to be a woman? Like, where do you go for money? You're a woman. Like, do you go to other women? I kept being like, no, I don't call every woman I know on the phone asking for money. Like, that would be weird. And then she quoted me saying, like, I seek out every woman in the room at every event. And I was like, oh my God, I sound like the creepiest female entrepreneur ever. But what Angela was saying is about diversity, and I think going after whom you jive with or whom you relate to on a product level, or whether it's fashion or education technology or what, I try to look past the gender issue as much as possible and see the person for who they are, or hope that they see us for who we are, not just women or edgy women, or I guess a little more like a teacher woman.
Great. The next question, I think, is more about when you guys got started and sort of when you knew this was what you wanted to do. You had your vision, you had your idea, you had, if you were working with a partner, you had your partner. What is the next step? Like, who do you call? Who do you ask for advice? What books do you read? Like, what did you guys do in those first couple months after you decided, let's try to make this happen?
Should we go this way or go first? I'll go first. Well, I called my mom, and I said I have an idea for an app. And she's like, what? Like, you don't know what apps are. Because I'm a policy student. I went to school here at Wagner, and I had no intention ever of starting an ed tech company. If you would have asked me 2 or 3 years ago, like, you'll be sitting on this panel speaking with other women about your startup, I'd be like, well, that's really crazy. I knew I wanted to do this when, like we were talking about, the pain point that you see in your daily work is there, and it's not going away anytime soon, and you have a solution to that. And that's when I sort of started getting really excited about what I was doing in terms of ed tech work. And I'm sorry, like, there's room for eyeglasses and Angela and everything like that. But I saw it when I wrote the idea on a piece of paper, and I know this is cliche, but if you guys have ideas, write it on a piece of paper.
I do it all the time.
And don't lose that piece of paper. And talk to someone about it, and talk to a friend about it, and ask, like, do you want to start this with me? And I sent an email to my current business partner saying, there's a policy competition, like, I have this idea, do you want to start it? And if I never sent that email, we would never have a tech company that's changing lives with kids across the country. So that's my one small little piece of advice for that.
I think we've known that we want to be entrepreneurs since we were like in 3rd grade. We were those kids where everyone's like, parents like, what do you want to be when you're older? And we're like, we want to be entrepreneurs. Like, it started up with us like selling like lemonade, or like making our own like pom-poms and like dancing, like, oh, okay, we'll do a cheerleading dance if you give us $1. Or like, we're those kids where like, we even like saved all of our money because we wanted to invest in like the best toy. We didn't want to like spend a lot of money on like a whole bunch of like little like toys that we wouldn't play with. We wanted to invest in like the best like sketchbooks and like the best like pens, and like we will save like 5 years of like birthday money at like such a young age. And I think that when we were 15, we worked a job. When we were 16, we had 2 jobs each. And when we were 17 and 18, we worked 3 jobs each. And so our work mentality was always there, and we supported our parents since we were 15. And so when we were 18, we loved sunglasses always, because in high school we were kind of like, we got bullied, we were really edgy, and we like grew up in the super suburbs, and a lot of people thought we were weird and they didn't understand us. So sunglasses for us were like a shield of protection. It gave us this level of like security. We were very like insecure and very torn apart and traumatized from like people not understanding us. And so we created our sunglasses only for ourselves. And then I was like, Coco, let's go to New York for a couple weeks. And she's like, no, Coco or Breezy, we'll like lose our, we'll lose our job. I'm like, who cares? Let's just go to New York. So we went to New York for 2 weeks, and literally it changed our life. We were like, we have to start our company. And social media is actually what really got us out there. Like, when MySpace was popular, like in 2006, 2007, we were those girls that had like, we were like internet celebrities. It's so embarrassing. But we were internet celebrities. At the time, we didn't have a product, but we already had a huge following. And so,
if you have a big following, you need to turn that into dollars. You can't just be cool with a huge following. You don't turn it into dollars.
and so we actually we just quit our jobs. We sold our car. We moved to New York with less than $1,000, and we started our company. And how I knew the day that we got on that flight, and the lady next to us asked us like, "What are you guys doing here? Like, what are you guys doing in New York?" We're like, "Oh, we're moving to New York. We're 18, 19-year-olds. We're starting a company, and we're gonna have like Rihanna wearing our glasses, and like we're just gonna like be worldwide. Like, we're speaking to existence, because these are things that happen now. But like, you would have looked at us like, okay, you guys just graduated high school. How are you gonna do this?" And that moment, I never had that feeling again. But it was like this like motivation and this like crazy like power that we had. I've never felt before. But that's how I knew that we had no choice but to be successful.
So in terms of the moment, I still haven't had it. So I don't know that every entrepreneur has to have this like crystallizing, defining moment. I've never had it. So I'll start by saying that. In terms of who I talk to as I'm maybe having mini moments, everybody, right? So I'm a big believer in run as many experiments as you can. Like you guys have always had 2 or 3 jobs, and 3 of the 4 startups I started while I had a full-time job. So just run all the experiments you can. Good books to help you do that. Lean Startup, I'm assuming most of you guys have read that. You're in this room. Rework by the guys who started 37 Signals is another great one. I think those are kind of the 2 that are my favorite.
Can I just ask you a quick question? Were most of your startups solo ventures or with a partner?
4-person founding team, 2-person founding team, 2-person founding team, 1-person founding team.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Angela says. I mean, basically, we took the slow burn method where we basically started the company and did a bunch of research and talked to everyone while we were still having full-time jobs. So we spent 2 years doing that and building the product while we were still working our full-time jobs. And and to be honest, we were working 2 jobs at that point. We were building the company and working our full-time jobs. And I actually work more now. So if you can't handle that, you can't run a startup. So if you can't do 2 jobs while you're with your nice, safe, secure day job, it's probably not the right career path for you. Again, talk to everyone. We talk to everyone. In one day, we hear that's a terrible idea. You're crazy. To that's awesome. It's going to revolutionize the industry. So everyone has a different opinion, but take it with a grain of salt. The books. I mean, I read everything. I went to General Assembly. I would hang out there. I took a ton of classes. I learned to code. Basically just constantly doing stuff to re-educate myself. Some of it was worth it, some of it wasn't. The book that I just read recently that I think every entrepreneur should read is The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. Read it, and if you still want to be an entrepreneur, good for you. It's probably your path. If you don't, I mean, it's very not negative, but it's hard. Being an entrepreneur is hard, and some of the stuff he talks about in the book is like, I want to throw up when I hear it because it's so real to me, and it's so horrifying. But I still want to do it. So if you can get through it and still want to do it, then go for it.
Awesome. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'll probably open the floor if you guys have any questions. If you could offer one piece of advice to students starting out as entrepreneurs, what would it be? Or if you could turn back time and talk to your former self as you were starting out, what would you tell yourself, knowing what you know now?
So I would say get a job first and do your company on the side. That's what I said. I learned a lot about managing people from watching other people manage people. And it might not be your industry, but just learning about organizational dynamics and what works and what doesn't, I think is really important.
This is going to sound weird because I actually agree with everything that Julie just said, but I'm going to say be as lazy as possible. And what I mean by that is entrepreneurs get really excited about the idea. They're like, I'm going to go build a prototype. I'm going to go do whatever. Don't. Find the laziest way to answer whatever question you have. Right? So the example I always give is, instead of building a website on Squarespace or Strikingly or Weebly, which still will take a weekend, Go on launchrock.com and build a landing page in 5 minutes, right? Say, this is my product, give me your email address if you want to buy it when it launches, right? That's a really, really lazy way of testing if your idea has any merit. And there's a million tools that exist like that today. Don't build a mobile app and put it into the iOS. Go onto App Architect, it's like PowerPoint for mobile apps. You can create a mobile app in like probably a day. You probably can't do it in 5 minutes the way you can from LaunchRock. And so I just challenge every entrepreneur just to be as lazy as you humanly